Good evening, everyone. Welcome to everybody attending in person and via live stream. Seeing that we have at least 3 board members present for tonight's scheduled governing board meeting, I'd like to begin. I'd also like to share that community members wanting to submit a public comment, now's the time to give the completed request to speak card to our governing board secretary. And those are accepted prior to the meeting. So if anyone's got one, that would be the time to bring it up. All right, I'd like to call the governing board meeting for June 24th of 2025 to order at 5:16 p.m. I'll begin with our tribal land acknowledgement. In partnership with the tribes who called Phoenix their home first, we acknowledge and respect the land our schools are built on. We commit to being a strong partner with any and all tribal nations who entrust their children to our schools. We are grateful and honored to be partners. Ms. Brambila, may we please have a roll call for board member attendance this evening?
Present.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa? Ms. Erica Ovalle?
Present.
President Carmen Trujillo?
Present. With that, we do have quorum and we're able to proceed. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. Should you wish to join me, please stand. Thank you. We will now move on to the adoption of our agenda. Item A5, Dr. Gonzalez, may I ask for your recommendation?
Madam President, we recommend that we accept the agenda as it is presented.
All right. I move that we adopt the agenda as presented this evening. Do we have a second?
I second it, but I just have a few things that I'd like to discuss. I don't know how to do that, so.
Okay. Which items
Um,
are concerning?
the lease with Herd, so, but I don't know when to do that. Do I do it on board updates? Do I?
It
I'm
would,
sorry.
now would definitely be the time.
Well, yeah, so my concerns mainly are around,
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry.
Now would be the time that
Okay.
are you maybe you wanting to pull it for discussion?
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
So if you want to pull it for discussion, you can make a motion to approve the agenda, pulling that item for discussion, or when it comes time for the consent, at that time, you can move to pull that item for discussion at that time,
Okay,
or entertain discussion at that time, either way.
okay.
Would it be best to pull it, you think, and make it an information item? Or discuss when we, is there a preference? It would come earlier, we would discuss it earlier if we left it on the consent agenda, but I think it's more formal to, if you'd like to pull it for discussion, that we would pull it and make it an action item? Yes.
You can make it a separate action item.
Okay, so then, was that what you would like to do?
Sure.
Okay. I move that we adopt the agenda as amended, moving item E6 to item H4. Do we have a second?
Is that what you want? Yes, so that's how it would get
Yeah,
discussed.
let's
So-
do that then. So
Okay,
you
then.
get a second for me.
Okay, you seconded. Okay. Okay, Alicia Vink, second.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Alicia Vink?
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa? Ms. Erica Ovalle?
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo?
Aye. With that, our motion passes and our agenda is amended. Moving item E6 to action item H4. With that, we will move on to item B1 for our current event summary. And we'll begin with Dr. Gonzalez to share our superintendent's report.
Good evening, President Trujillo, members of the board, our community cabinet, and staff. For our students and families, I hope you are enjoying a wonderful summer, that you have a summer full of joy, and that you're getting some time to rest as you prepare for the next school year. We're very excited to see you next spring or next fall. In Arizona, it's actually next summer or this summer. We're so proud of our students who have just completed their summer enrichment programs. This year, we had several students who learned about their heritage and learned Indigenous skills such as storytelling, beading, and creative arts in our Native American summer enrichment program led by Mrs. Begay and Mrs. King. Other summer enrichment programs included our English language development classes, extended school year for our students with exceptional needs, our literacy instruction for third grade readers, and career exploration for students going into 7th and 8th grade. We also had 3 separate 21st century learning grants that provided summer programming. In all, we had 10 programs that served over 350 students. Special thanks to the people who made this happen, Dr. Ailshire and the entire curriculum and instruction team led by Dr. Galetti. Mrs. Zeeb, our federal programs coordinator, who ensured that we had the funding to be able to do that. And Ms. Gonzalez with her team, Mrs. Fagan and her team, Mrs. Elvis and her team, and the leadership of our summer school administrators that included Mrs. Baruman, Mrs. Arce, and Ms. Engdahl, as well as all of our 21st century coordinators. Thank you to all of you for providing a wonderful summer experience for our children. And we will not meet before Independence Day. So as we get ready to celebrate our nation's independence, we want to wish everyone a very happy 4th of July. Be safe. And as our friends at Faith North would remind us, be kind and be you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Moving on to item B1, board members' reports. Do we have any board members that would like to share? Hearing none, I just have a few things. I would like to also share the hope that students and staff are enjoying their summers, staying cool, whether that was participating in one of our summer programs or enjoying it in a different way. Know that we're all thinking of you and getting ready to welcome everybody back soon. I hope everyone and their pets have precautions in place to beat the heat. Remember that dialing 211 between the hours of 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. can connect one to nearby cooling centers and transportation to get there if need be. Next June is Awareness Month for a handful of things, but I'd like to share that it is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And presently, my family is navigating symptoms of this disease. And it's been impactful, to say the least, how much I've learned about brain health. So I'd like to share a few sentences from the Alzheimer's Association as a prompt to raise awareness. It's never too early or too late to take action that helps promote a healthy brain. Get familiar with brain health and learn what steps you can take if you or someone you love has memory concerns. Science shows that adopting healthy habits like getting exercise and good quality sleep may reduce the risk of cognitive decline. With that, I'd like to lastly share that our first day of classes will resume on July 30th. Please watch out for important school information on our district website, social media outlets, or even our school marquees for back-to-school information. Moving on to item C1. Mr. Perez, may we please have page 4 of our Student Outcomes Focused Governance PowerPoint, please? Item C1 is the agenda item to offer an update of our governance framework. This meeting will spend some time monitoring our progress in pursuit of our long-term 5-year goals that were adopted in 2023. Tonight, we'll be having discussion and presentation on of progress monitoring reports for board goals number 1. The percent of third grade students with a pass rate on reading as per AASA will increase from 25% on August 2023 to 40% by August of 2028. And board goal number 4, which is the percent of 8th grade students with a pass rate on ELA as per the AASA, will increase from 29% on August 2023 to 44% by August 2028. We will also be discussing next steps to carry out our board policy diet, where board members would make time to meet up and review current policies that pertain to the governing board and how we govern the district. So we better understand our policies and the focus of those policies. With that, let's move on to item C2, our discussion of board goal number 1. Dr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And this evening, we are very proud to share our summative data for this year's target in governing board goal number 1. And so this is our overview sheet that we share. You can see we started in 2024 with 23%. Our goal for this year was to hit 27%. And as you can see on the next page, we hit that mark. So we're very proud of the work that our teachers, our students, and our staff have all participated in to help us achieve that mark. So as we look at this, you can see we break the data down to show the different demographic groups as well as the different federal program groupings. And we do this intentionally so that we are able to make sure that every one of our students is being considered as we think about strategies to make sure that they are all being able to achieve at the highest levels. So one of the things that you'll notice in our progress monitoring reports, first of all, that we report whether we made the mark or not. And secondly, that we have our areas of focus and plans for focus. So in this, you'll see that reading foundational skills was a really important aspect of what we were working on in terms of a strategy. That included making sure that teachers were trained in the science of reading, making sure that we're building an understanding of strategies that build fluency and comprehension. This strategy also worked in tandem with goal 3, which is our English language learners, to make sure that the strategies we're using in supporting English language learners are also strategies that are supporting better reading comprehension and fluency skills across the board. The other aspect of this is building in that language proficiency in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We know that the more experience our young learners get in this, the better prepared they are to hit those grade level marks by 3rd grade. So in terms of our plans for focus, we'll improve consistency with the use of instructional practices, curriculum and data effective cycles. So helping our teachers really use the information that they're getting from students on a day-by-day basis so that they can adjust and monitor instruction to meet the individual learner's needs. And then using vocabulary consistently, teaching how to break words apart and how to pull out specific important vocabulary that students need to understand before they can comprehend what's happening in a story or in directions. And then giving our students explicit writing instruction and giving them specific feedback. That was a big pivot this year for us to really emphasize the writing aspect of learning to read. So with that, on the next page, we have a question, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Ailshire.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Good afternoon, President Trujillo, to our wonderful board, to my colleagues on cabinet, to our community, and everyone watching at home. This is a really wonderful question from President Trujillo that really gets to the heart of what we've been emphasizing, is that we don't want to just collect the data and not do the investigative research behind why the data plays out the way it does. And so to your question, President Trujillo, you said that we had 8 schools increase their outcomes, 6 that decreased for goal 1, and ultimately what changes should be made to make sure we are supporting the students that experienced decreases. And I want to answer this in two parts because we learned just as much as about interviewing the schools and the teachers and the principals who really did make great gains and what are they doing, as well as looking at the schools that experienced declines and like what can they find as the root cause. So the analysis that I'm going to provide to you was a little bit of both. Dr. Galetti, Dr. Lloyd, myself, we always take this data and then try and follow up with as many of our principals and teachers as possible as to sort of getting down to the root causes to why. And so I'm giving you a hybrid answer on that. What we found to be true, I'm going to give you three areas of things that we need to make sure that we're doing better and things that we found that were not present at all school sites that might have impacted, that we believe impacted student achievement. One is we have been working over the past 3 years to really solidify concrete intervention blocks in every single one of our campuses. These intervention blocks would be done during the academic school day and built into their master schedules. We have come a long way in the fact that those are present now on master schedules, but the schools that made the greatest gains had a real concrete structure to what was going on in their intervention blocks. The intervention blocks can take, just because you've allocated 45 minutes or you've allocated an hour, doesn't mean necessarily that the teachers have the training to know how to support students in a walk to read model, for example, or how to be able to support students in small group lessons that allow them to focus specifically on that kids in that academic standard. Schools that did really well did that well. So we want to give emphasis to those schools that were doing it. And we also know that some of our schools, they admitted that they struggled to get the right training to their teachers to do the intervention blocks correctly, or they planned the intervention blocks and it was sort of a hit or miss part. So we know that that has definitive student outcomes and something that we want to pursue. We want to make sure that our teachers have a real concrete understanding of how to collect this data and use this data to plan and implement their instruction. The schools that showed the greatest gains regularly had teachers meeting in their CTMs or their collaborative team meetings and had a real concrete focus of gathering just-in-time data, not dead data, right? This is data that was happening at the moment on a weekly basis and being able to plan their instruction, plan their intervention groups, utilizing that data. Again, we make assumptions that this might be something that someone would get in teacher prep or teacher college and so on and so forth. And what we find is, no, it really requires the principal and our support teams to take a concrete look at those schools and be able to provide those supports. Schools that did that well, we saw the highest gains in there and the highest level of teacher efficacy in supporting that because they knew the students that needed to have the focus. Last but not least, we're really excited of the work that we have been doing to say not only you need to have an intervention block, but we are now developing curriculum resources and training to support those intervention blocks. So schools that did 95% group with Fidelity, they saw quite a bit of gains in comparison to schools that struggled with the implementation process. The same thing for schools, well, we'll talk about that later, where when we talk about the middle school, we'll see the same correlation. That schools that at their middle school level were implementing for the first time last year, 95% for middle school, or another intervention program I have, we saw them making some really, really strong gains. We implemented that mid-year last year. We'll be doing that with all schools at the beginning of this upcoming year, but I get ahead of myself on a goal. And those are some answers to your questions regarding what we saw in terms of explanation of the decreases, but also what we learned from the students or the schools that outperformed. So moving on to the next slide, going into, again, yes, go ahead.
So just really quick, what sticks out to me is, okay, so I see you guys made it 27%, but I'm seeing that it's being anchored by 69% of 32 white kids versus 328 Hispanic kids that's not meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're measuring our success, like I guess that there's like a racial gap there, racial disparity. And so I find that concerning.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I'd rather see, the highest numbers or people in red, I'd rather see them excelling. But right now we're measuring our success off that 69%. So I find that a little disappointing. So I don't know what the answer or the solutions are to that, but that's something that I think we got to discuss further when we look at these numbers. So I just want to flag that.
Thank you.
And in answer to that, we recognize that, and that's part of why we tease this apart like this so that we can see that disparity between different groups. What we can say is that we're showing growth with all of the groups because we can't get to that 27% if all groups aren't increasing. They're red because they're not yet to the target goal that we have for them at 32%. And that's what we need to continually work at. So we appreciate you calling that out.
Dr. Gonzalez, just to ask now before we move on to the next slide, you mentioned how this works in tandem with goal 3. And I remember there being a writing part to goal 3. So I wondered if that was, I just want to know if that's the connection or if it's bigger than that as far as strategies and skills you were talking about, so I could fully grasp what you meant.
There are a lot of factors that play into this. Reading is an important conceptual development for students, and writing is a big part of that. So in goal 3 this year, we really focused on the sheltered English immersion strategies, really trying to make sure that the students who are learning English are learning it in a way that is helping them to not only understand the words, but apply the words to comprehending material that they read. And then in turn, being able to use the words to clearly write and articulate the things that they are seeing in print, but also the things that they're feeling. And so being able to give those students that experience are really important. One of the things, and we'll talk a little bit about this again later, but one of the things that we focused on this year with our ELs as well as with all students, we want to focus on giving them opportunities to listen, to speak, and to write. So what we want to see more of is the students talking in class, the students talking to each other, the students asking questions of the teacher, as well as being able to hear something, interpret it, and make sense of it by writing it out. We know that for that to happen, students have to get feedback from their teachers about what they're doing in real time. As Dr. Ailshire said, we can't wait until the end of the year assessment to say, oh, whoops, we didn't hit that. We have to be looking at what students are doing in real time and giving those students feedback. The first writing assessment that we did with our students, and this is part of the reading as well as the EL goal. The first writing assessment we did, we heard from the students that were in Slack that the writing assessment really surprised them. It was the first time they'd actually done a writing sample that they had to do in a timed sitting and then turn it in. And we asked, so what was the best part of that? And the student said it was when the teacher gave me feedback and showed me what to do differently, because when I did a writing test again, I did much better. So that's the kind of experience that we want every child to get, but in particular, our EL learners, because that ability to read, write, speak, listen are really critical components. And that's one area that we know we've made a huge difference. In fact, that's the area that we met the goal for the past 2 years in a row, is with our English language learners. So we want to continue to build that momentum and spread it across to all students.
So on the next slide, we see basically the analysis of the data being done by school, looking at where their performance growth has occurred since 2023 to 2024, as well as 2025. In the far left column, you'll see number of students. So that's the actual number of students that we're basing this data on. So again, we always run up, and I'm going to emphasize it again just for statistical purposes. You know, when you're dealing with a sample size of 17 students in the case of Emerson, 3-4 students really make a difference one way or the other. So that's why it's really critically important that we're really looking at every single student and where they're falling, and the teachers are aware of where all those students are, because even at our largest, classes, which would be Shaw, they only have 52 students that fall into that 3rd grade range. And again, the emphasis in 3rd grade, I didn't mention it before, but we believe it is imperative that we focus on that 3rd grade because of the state statute that basically says that these students need to be reading at grade level. Students that aren't and are performing behind their peers in these areas are students that we identify for the summer programming that we discussed earlier for No Child Left Behind, and trying to make sure those students get that extra support during the summer. Which leads me to, I believe, the next question, which are what are some of the, this again is a question from President Trujillo. What are some of the specific things the data tells us about the lowest performing groups? Actually, this is Dr. Gonzalez will be talking a little bit about this.
And this actually goes back to one of the superintendent guardrails, because one of the things that we saw is that the schools that had the lowest gains and the steepest declines, they experienced a loss of a teacher in third grade. So whether it was the teacher resigning, the teacher going on maternity leave, or other personal leaves, that disruption in the teacher was really, really critical to the student's success. And so when we think about our goal for retaining teachers and creating those atmospheres where teachers feel supported and that they can develop in our system, that's a really important aspect for us to continue to work on, because that's where we could consistently see, and any principal will tell you, if you lose a good teacher, even if you lose an average teacher in the middle of the year, it really is disruptive to our learners. And of course, we don't want to lose any teachers that are doing a great job for our students. The other aspect that we saw was the use of key ideas and details. And what that is when a student is reading something, to be able to say, this is an important piece of information in the section that I'm reading, and here are the details that help me to say, that's why this is an important message. In addition, it was the integration of knowledge. So how did they take what they already knew about the subject and combine it into what they were reading about? So if I'm reading about panda bears, or last night I watched a TV show that had the honey badger. If I'm reading about honey badgers, I already know a little bit about honey badgers because I saw a fun video about them, and I know that they're really tough and strong. And so that integration of the knowledge to what I'm reading, and in this reading passage, I find out that honey badgers live in the Serengeti and they can fight off packs of wild dogs. I reinforce that understanding by going back to what I already know about how tough a honey badger is. So those are the kinds of things that we have to give students more of those experiences. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The more that we can help students think about what they already know about something before they enter into the reading about it and brainstorm all the things that we know, then when they read, that knowledge is reinforced, and then they're able to say, this was a key idea, and the detail that helped me know this was important was this one or this one. And it helps them ferret out it helps them understand what are the ideas that I can let go of, but what are the ones I really have to attend to.
And to give you a context of how important this particular standard and our students being able to understand the standard is, these schools that scored, that met or surpassed the goal on average scored 12% higher in the areas of key IDs and detail and being able for students to be able to pull evidence out of text than our other schools. So that really tells us that when schools are actively bringing social studies into ELA and bringing writing into social studies and bringing writing and reading into science, which is where that informational text really lives, when we see better integration for that, those schools that did that and did that well, that's when they saw those gains of that 12%. And that 12% really makes a difference because it's weighted so heavily as an informational piece. So, and I give Dr. Lloyd complete credit for that nerd fact, but he did find that out, which was phenomenal. All right, and then there was one final question from President Trujillo. Again, phenomenal questions, and using the vocabulary that we're talking about, like how are we monitoring these things? Like how are we actually looking at this? And what are some examples of strategies to improve the monitoring process on our foundational reading? As I said before, we now know and realize with some of the data that we're collecting at this point, more time needs to be spent on informational text, and we need to do a better job of that cross-disciplinary connection between what's happening in science, what's happening in social social studies. How do we connect that so students see that writing across the curriculum, reading across the curriculum, where they can have that opportunity to pull out information and main ideas out of informational text. I am, and speaking of a nerd moment, I, as a social studies nerd, am incredibly excited about the adoption that our board recently approved of the Savas curriculum. It's been a long time coming for us to have a really rigorous social studies curriculum, and we now have that in our district. We'll be doing our first year of implementation for that, and it was one of the things that we really looked for in the adoption process is this going to be a curriculum that will foster students reading and writing and being able to pull out key ideas and details to support these standards. So when we are looking at that adoption process and going through that, that's something that we're going to be monitoring a lot of how that implementation is doing, what is our training, and how we seeing that cross collaboration across disciplines. The other one that we pointed in is, and I'm going to just keep going back to this, is the monitoring of just good, strong instruction. We have done a phenomenal job as the years have gone by of having a solid written curriculum, and we have a really solid assessed curriculum. We're solid on those, and those are things that took a long time to get into place. As those of us who have been here know, that wasn't necessarily the circumstance 5 years ago. What we now need to be able to focus on is how are we teaching on an everyday basis the written and the assessed curriculum that we spent so much time and money in adopting. What are the strong foundational tier 1 strategies? As Dr. Gonzalez pointed out, one of the things that we found the greatest success in goal 3 was the adoption of those PSYOP strategies for all students, right? All of our students. This data is very clear, no matter what their color, what their race, all of our students are foundational readers at this point. So it doesn't matter if they are emerging bilingual or monolingual, they're all learning to read and to write. So how are we using these research-proven strategies of scaffolding, student discussion, in our everyday practices, and how are we monitoring that in our daily instruction? So working with our principals for their monitoring and their daily walkthroughs, and the role of those support teams and support schools to come in and look at what that is and provide feedback, and for us to come back as a CNI department to look at how we're supporting that everyday good instruction that we know our teachers are capable of doing. They need the guidance and training to be able to do both at the district level as well as the school site. So that will be something that we know is phenomenally important going forward. The schools that showed those gains, they had those. Those were classrooms that our teams were able to go through, see what was happening on a daily basis, and they saw good, coherent instruction using the adopted curriculum, using the adopted assessments, but really it's about that everyday teaching.
May I ask for just a few examples of what changes might be taking place for the area and what needs more attention for consistent communication with families to provide updates on progress, resources, and suggestions? I'm sure that looks probably different at each school, but I don't know if that's really true or not. So I just was wondering, what are those, like those nights that we have where the families come in, or is it more, I guess, what do those strategies look like?
So I'm gonna look over at my colleague over here, because this is something that we can all speak very passionately to, everyone in CNI, but also the work that Director Sims is doing with our FACE specialists. I think she can speak a little bit to that as well. So
Thank you, Dr. Elshire. President Trujillo, this is something that the FACE team and I worked on this year, involvement versus engagement. And we want parents to truly have the vocabulary and that academic vocabulary so that they can have those rich conversations with teachers about what is phonemics, what is phonemic awareness, what are all these big terms that we're using when we talk about reading and writing and phonetics. And so the FACE team is really trying to implement more data nights so that there's really upfront understanding about this is where we are, this is where we'd like to be, and this is how you can help us help your students get there. So this is a learning curve for the FACEs. Some of them were a little intimidated by this, but we want everybody here who's working with students to have that vocabulary and be able to express that. So it is varied a little bit at campuses. Some FACEs are more comfortable than others, but this is something that our team plans to promote throughout the year and really implement with both our math and our literacy nights at the schools.
Thank you. Those are the words I was looking for as far as the math and literacy nights. I'm going to make a few notes. Are there any other questions? All right. Hearing none, we will Are we ready to move on to, okay. Uh, Item C3, I'd like to request the approval of our progress monitoring report for board goal number 1. I move that we approve the progress monitoring report for board goal number 1. Do we have a second?
Alicia Vinca, second.
Thank you kindly. May we please have a roll call vote? Mrs. Pramila.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. Thank you very much. With that, our motion passes, and we will move on to item C4, our discussion of board goal number 4. Dr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. Goal 4 is our middle years literacy grant goal. And unfortunately, this is a goal that we have not hit. And reading, all learning builds on each other, but reading in particular, as well as mathematics, starts with a strong foundation in literacy. As in mathematics, it starts with a strong foundation in numeracy. And we're realizing more and more in the research and education, but also in our district in particular, how important that foundation is. So as we look at this, you can see our goal was to get to 35% this year. And if you look at where we are on the next slide, you can see we're close, but we didn't get there. So we're at 30%. And that's an area that we recognize we need to continue to build our middle years students' opportunities for reading. Dr. Ailshire talked about reading across the curriculum, writing across the curriculum, really bringing in opportunities for reading and writing in science, in mathematics, in social studies, even in arts and music and physical education. The more opportunities we give students for reading and writing, the better they're going to do. But we are struggling. This is also the group of students who, as we look at that foundation, many of them missed part of those foundational years due to the closure of schools during COVID. Not an excuse, but something we have to be aware of and we have to constantly work on. So what do we do differently? So here you can see again, and if you look at the breakdowns again, the white students are performing better than our other groups, but there are only 17 of them. So even with that 17, they're not the group that are carrying the entire group of students. Our Hispanic students in this case actually showed a lot of growth. They're up to 29%, very, very close to hitting their target. And that group with 371 is the group that's actually carrying us in making the gains that we did make. So looking at that, that takes us to our next question. And again, you're going to see a little bit of repeat in terms of what we're looking at, but these are important questions for us to be able to answer regardless of the grade level group that we're looking at. So Dr. Ailshire, I'll turn it back to you.
So there's going to be some themes here that I'm going to point out, and especially on the other side when we're going to see that there are some schools that were very, very close to making the goal overall, right? And then there's a couple of schools that you're going to see on the next slide where it's a real decline. 2 of those 3 schools lost their 8th grade teacher either beginning or midway through the year. So again, we see the absolute impact of what happens when we lose teachers during the course of the year. And again, the absolute importance for us as a district to be continually working on our recruitment and retention. We do a phenomenal job of both, but when these losses do occur at the grade level, again, when we're talking about 34 kids or 17 kids, if those kids lose a teacher, it makes a difference for the entire school in terms of those performance. So I'm going to be providing the board with a more in-depth update of the work that we're doing around our initiative called Build, which is a 3-year initiative that we're doing for all teachers in years 1, 2, and 3 to provide consistent mentoring and support for all of our teachers in their first 3 years as a district. It's a very exciting initiative being led by our C&I department, and we believe in working in conjunction with HR. It's going to be something that we know that it's not just HR's issue, right? To retain students. Retain teachers. When we lose teachers, students suffer. And if students suffer, That's everybody's job. So I'll be providing you guys with a board update as to that. And hopefully as we begin rolling out that process, giving you some more information and presentations on that. But that is definitely one of our strategies of how are we helping the students that are most impacted. It's the loss of the teacher. So going back to whether it's third grade, eighth grade, we see that as a commonality across those. Yes, yeah, and going back to the idea that, you know, when you only have, especially when our middle schools are, and this is something that we've talked about with the grade banding, we only have one teacher at an ELA, right? So if Whittier loses their one eighth grade ELA teacher, you're going to see that impacting not only the eighth grade and all of that eighth grade. Many times that teacher's also teaching the seventh grade students as well. So we know that we need to be focusing, and that goes to one of your last questions, President Trujillo, of what are we doing for those seventh graders? We know that those seventh graders are more than likely also have been impacted by the loss of a teacher because many of those middle school teachers are impacting not just that one class level, but possibly even the seventh graders as well. So we need to be focusing and supporting them as well as that lost instructional time. Again, a couple of other things that we want to make sure that we're emphasizing. We have gotten better in our K-3 intervention blocks, as we talked about a little bit before, and we saw that we made that goal. Those of us who have lived in the middle school world know that doing interventions consistently at middle school is tough. These teachers have 6 different class periods throughout the day. Class periods are somewhere in the ballpark of 60 to 90 minutes. They struggle sometimes of having the right resources and the right training to do intervention blocks appropriately. Whereas if I'm a third grade teacher and I've got those kids all day, I can carve out that 45 minutes. I can carve out that hour. More difficult when you get to middle school, and the gap and the needs become greater, right? Because there are things that students maybe have picked up in 4th grade or picked up in 3rd grade, and you're trying as the 8th grade teacher to fill in all of those things before they move on to high school. So we'll talk a little bit about another one of your questions about, well, what are we doing with that? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we're doing to try and support our middle school teachers and being able to do those interventions with consistency as we're seeing happening in our K-3. And again, just schools that made the greatest gains. Again, we asked those schools, why do you believe that you made those greatest gains? And they cited the 3 things again, the 3 things that we know to be true. More frequent database conversations and their structured collaborative team times meant the world to the teachers. Consistent implementation of those structured interventions and consistently providing high quality Tier 1, meaning everyday instruction to all students, really made the difference for those schools that made the goal. So moving on to the next slide here, this is going to emphasize some of the points that I just reiterated again for us looking at. Again, I can't emphasize enough statistically, looking at that sample size. Many of those students, we're talking about 8th grade, there's one teacher in charge of all 28 of those kids or 43 of those kids, so on and so forth. And so you'll see some of the schools that had some of the sharpest declines. I can tell you exactly what happened in those schools, which is the loss of the professional in the classroom. And that really had that overwhelming impact on the kiddos, but also making sure that we're providing strong Tier 1. So what is working? Schools with common intervention time. We talked about this. Consistent writing and practice. We've seen more and more of our schools really honing in on the writing process. As Dr. Gonzalez pointed out, we're seeing more of our schools adopting that in terms of their assessment and their instruction. A lot of our schools indicated that that was really key to their success because they were able to implement that across the curriculum. And then seeking additional learning opportunities and support with curriculum and instruction. Those schools that reached out and needed more support and the school teams were able to come in and were welcomed in and do stuff, we saw changes and turnaround. So we're hoping that that serves as a model for our schools that we are here to help and we are here to support. And then again, what needs more attention, making sure that we are providing more intervention times and train around interventions, providing curriculum resources around interventions and how to implement them in Tier 1 instruction. Again, talking about the connections to families that you had pointed out, President Trujillo. I said doctor, that sounds nice. President Trujillo, in terms of how we know that the kids in K-5, they show up when we do the events, trying to get those middle school parents to come in and be a part of that conversation. That's a challenge in its own right. We know that as parents of kids and educators as well. So how are we doing that and engaging those families? Because you don't engage them the same way you engage a kinder family, right? That's a different group. I'll turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez for the next question.
So We had almost equal schools increase and decrease in their outcomes for goal 4. That's a great observation and one that we all felt. And we want to know what factors contributed to almost half of our 8th grade classrooms experiencing a decrease. So in addition to the loss of the teacher that Dr. Ailshire talked about, the other aspect of that is when a teacher is having to plan alone and they don't have a colleague that they can bounce ideas off of, that they can share resources and strategies with one another, it becomes very lonely. And so that's one of the areas that we really did see that decrease, which is one of the reasons that we've moved to that grade banding. When you look at the schools that all had the increases and were hitting the target, they have multiple teachers that are working together in that grade level to be able to do that. And that does make a difference. The other thing, and this goes back to specific strategies we have to teach, key details continued to be a theme across the board at all grade levels when we assessed and evaluated our AASA data. Being able to understand what the key idea is and what are the details that support it, what are the extraneous details that are meant to throw us off or that aren't helpful. This was particularly true in informational text. The other thing that we saw is our students don't get a lot of opportunities to read informational text. And think about in your world as an adult functioning in the world, what do you read most often? Probably informational text, because you're reading a report on student data, you're reading a report on economics and what's going to happen if tariffs are put in place or aren't put in place. Most of the reading that we end up doing as adults is informational reading. And how do you read for information and how do you understand how to apply what you've learned? That's a really different skill set than reading for enjoyment. They're both very, very important. As somebody who reads for enjoyment, I think that's a critical part of being a literate person. But you also have to be able to read for information and understand what to take from it and how to apply it into the work that you're doing. Our students are struggling with the informational context of that. So again, a celebration for our new adoption of the social studies, because that really is going to give our students more of an opportunity. And our C&I team have done an amazing job of making sure that there's alignment between what they're learning in reading and how that dovetails into what they're learning in social studies at each of the different grade levels. So I might read informational text, and then I'm going to read something and work on some strategies in reading, and I'm going to be able to go back to that informational text from social studies and apply those strategies in the reading that I'm doing for social studies. So there are going to be some really great opportunities for us, but that's year 1 will be next year. So it's going to take a while to build that up, but we believe with the training that we've had with our PSYOP strategies and the training that we're getting with the social studies and the ELA training that happened earlier this year, we have a critical mass of teachers who are going through these trainings, and the reconfigurations of the grade levels and the grade banding of our schools. That's really helping to pull together all of the components that we can point to and say, this is making a difference for students. We believe we're on track to keep making a difference for even more of our students.
And so that leads us to the last question from President Trujillo, which are what are some descriptions of strategy changes that will take place for our future 8th grade students? So there's a couple that I'm really excited about that I sort of hinted at before, so I buried the lead there. But so we have consistently provided, for example, 95%. Which is it's a concrete strategy reading intervention for our elementary school students, and this is a common thing that happens in K-8s, is that you're providing a lot of interventions for elementary, and then hopefully it works out when they get to middle. But we need to be providing it for all of our students. So we saw there's 2 schools in particular that really jumped on the bandwagon mid-year this year. Mid-year this year, we had a unique opportunity to pilot 2 different intervention programs for middle school students. The 95%, which has now been upgraded so it encompasses middle school students, grades 6 through 8, as well as the other one was rewards. And we actually piloted both of these. I say piloted because we didn't really get access to these programs until September. Am I correct on that one? Later, even later. So it was about mid-year, when we finally got access to these programs. And again, this speaks to the ingenuity of some of our leaders who said, yeah, we'll take it. Even if it's mid-year, we'll try it, we'll do it, we'll implement it. And we saw some really concrete data that we're excited to present to the rest of the principals, saying the schools that did this and did this consistently, they made their goals, they made their gains, and they made gains not only in terms of proficiency, but again, to your point, Ms. Ovalle, in terms of are all of our students growing, right? We want to really make sure that our students that are minimally proficient, are they making the level of growth that they need to start making those goals as well? And that's where we really saw a lot of progress of moving those students that were minimally proficient and moving them up into categories of either intermediate or actual proficiency. So they're moving up at a faster rate. So we'll be implementing that for all of our middle schools next year. They're going to be having the options of either rewards or 95%. We have people that are well skilled on training on both of those and implementing those with fidelity at those campuses. So we'll finally now add a hammer to their tool chest of what an intervention can look like versus just do an intervention, right? So we're very excited about that. Again, we know that being able to Dr. Gonzalez's point, if we've got teams of teachers that are able to look at the data together, we know that makes an impact because they're able to not only plan together, but then they're able to share their results together of what their instruction looked like. Historically, we've really struggled with that because we have one 8th grade teacher and who are they supposed to mentor with or plan with? And as we do the grade banding, we're excited with that opportunity, but I'm also going to give credit to our CNI department, who is doing a lot to restructure the role of the instructional coach and really make sure that our instructional coaches have a focus in middle school or elementary, and then pairing those individuals with schools that need it the most. So we're actually in the process right now, and it's a needle in a haystack, and they're hard to find, but trying to find people with middle school experience that are good coaches that we can then put to schools that are struggling in these areas that have the experience in working with middle school students and with middle school teachers, and using those coaches as people that are going to help with database planning and implementation and just good tier 1 instruction. That's something very different because before, when we had master teachers, they were sort of K-8, figure it out, and many of them were more elementary focused, again, leaving our middle school teachers to kind of fend out for themselves. We're turning that around now. We're having an equal proportion of instructional coaches that are certified and good at elementary, but also getting those ones that have the secondary certification that can help support middle school teachers as well, because as a middle school teacher, we need it. I think that's it. Yep,
I have just a couple clarifying questions.
please.
So Whittier had one ELA teacher, is that?
Yeah, it was one for their 8th, and then were they also teaching 7th, Dr. Galati? Yeah.
Okay, and then are you saying that at Capitol, they'll have more than one next year?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the consolidation process, we've added teachers into Capital. I believe they've now got, how many teachers do they have in their middle school level at this point, Dr. Galati? Yeah, they're doing 3 per grade level, and I believe yep.
Okay. I think I just want, I guess, their enrollment numbers then, because I know that these are our 8th graders this year, but that would put them at like 70-ish 8th graders if we're just looking at these numbers, and Whittier had 65. So it's interesting to me to see how we've moved from 1 ELA to 3 with that. So just the numbers, the enrollment numbers for 7th and 8th grade. And then you said Whittier lost their ELA teacher this year? Is that the story? No.
I believe that teacher in particular, well, I don't want to talk about specific teachers, but
Well, right, correct. But I think you did say that some of those scores were
at some of those other campuses that you
affected
saw
by-
that we did
but
lose.
Whittier was not a campus that was affected by a loss of a teacher.
That teacher did not leave during the course of the year. There were other struggles.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Dr. Ailshire, you said we're going to implement these new strategies next year. So does that mean next school year, like this coming up school year?
August.
Like a year from now? Okay.
No, August. So yeah, we wanted to make sure we piloted the, are we talking about the rewards at 95%? Yeah, so we piloted that this year. We wanted to see, and we found success in both of those programs. So it's nice that we have the flexibility that we can kind of say, here are two different programs and two different options, and give some ownership and agency to our teachers to take those trainings, but we're not waiting. So we've seen the success of those programs in the schools that adopted it. So we will, that starts in August.
Got it.
Yep.
My last small question that I would, I'm curious to know, like, what do students know about these scores? Like, what do those discussions look like in the classroom, like when you do classroom observations? Like, I just wonder if they know,
Mm-hmm.
like, if how to help a friend that might be struggling to know this. I get that it's like the last year, everyone's just gunning to get to high school, so it's probably not top of mind, but I just wonder what those conversations might sound like.
So what it sounds like is student goal setting. I think first and foremost is students being able to know where they're at. You know, yes, having our students be able to serve as mentors to one another and support one another, that's certainly critically important. It goes along with a good instructional practice of discourse, right? When students are able to talk about the content with one another, it solidifies their learning and their understanding. Both students benefit, both the ones that is receiving that and the ones that's explaining it. So we know from a tier one perspective, that's just a powerful strategy. I want to take that one step further, which is what we also know to be a very powerful strategy is some of the work, and I want to give a shout out, for example, Lowell. This is a school that has seen that their scores have been struggling, and what they're trying to now implement is student data setting, where the middle school students really own their data and really understand their data, and they're old enough now to understand, hey, key ideas in detail and knowing organizational text really helps you. So how do we really? That's a harder concept to explain to our third graders, but an eighth grade student, that should be something that we are communicating to them. Just as Dr. Gonzalez communicated the importance of knowing informational text and expository text sets you up for high school. Because once you get to high school, outside of Shakespeare, that's all you're reading. And even Shakespeare, that's kind of existential stuff. So being able to really make sure the students know their data, and again, now I really do wish Dr. Lloyd was here. He's on a much needed vacation, but this is a professional goal of his, is to ingrain our leaders with the urgency of making sure that they are modeling and scaffolding and showing their teachers how to do student goal setting. It's a very, very powerful strategy for all students. I mean, even kindergartners can kind of graph how many letters that they've been doing, but especially for those middle school students in doing that, them knowing where their data is and where they stand gives them agency and ownership, and it's really powerful. So that will be something that we're just sort of always working on and working towards, and we're seeing some of our schools increasingly adopt that. Also, we're hearing it from our principals when we're doing our goal setting. This is a very fun time of year for Dr. Gonzalez and I. We get to hear their goals and their professional ambitions, and family engagement and student goal setting. These are things that they're talking a lot about. So it's fresh on the mind, and we're going to be excited for the implementation.
And I want to give a really quick plug. Dr. Lloyd, at the end of the state assessment, he surveys the students, and it's a voluntary assessment. But he had over 300 students across third through eighth grade who responded. And he asked them, you know, how do you feel you did? What were the strategies you used? And do you feel like, based on where you were, did you show growth? And they're also using this not only at the end of the year assessments, but they're using this on their iReady assessments. So students look at where they've been and they set a goal for where they want to be. And then when they see what their results are, they're able to talk about, this really helped me. I used, and they're naming specific strategies that they're using. And most of the students said, I felt confident because I knew I could take my time. I had breathing strategies to help me. I knew to mark a question that I wasn't sure about and come back to it later. They're talking about all of these different strategies, and we can share that in a board update. But it's really telling that the students are beginning to be aware of where they are and what they're doing to grow. And when they see those gains, it's why we celebrate them in our governing board meetings and why we take the certificates to them about super achievers. It's because of the growth that they're making, and that can't be underestimated.
Will Whittier also have multiple ELA teachers next year?
We can get that information for you. We have to look at their master schedule.
Okay, and on that note, I guess then just the teacher breakdown for middle school across the board would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And hearing no further questions, I'd like to move on to item C5 and move to approve the progress monitoring report for goal number 4. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Kindly, may we please have a roll call vote? Mrs. Pramila?
Dr. Alicia Vink,
No.
Ms. Erica Valle,
Yes.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Yes. With that, our motion passes and we will move on to item D1. This is a time for public comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01G, actions taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later time. With that, each commenter will have 3 minutes to share, and I will call our public comment participants up to the podium. Do we have any electronic comments this evening, Ms. Brown?
Yes, we have one.
Okay. Thank you kindly. May I please welcome Ms. Allison Golick to the podium, please?
Good evening, board and the district. My name is Allison Gullick. I'm the parent of 2 children enrolled in the district. And I want to begin by stating very clearly that I believe that parents must make the best choice and decisions for their children, especially when the public school system is not meeting their needs. Sorry. In Phoenix Elementary, I have firsthand witnessed children with disabilities falling through the cracks, children subjected to abuse at the hands of their educators or their aides, and have had their parents' concerns ignored. Every child deserves a safe and supportive learning environment, whether it's a district public school or not. As a parent of a child with a disability, I have seen how critical school programs like Beyond Autism are, and I support their work fully. But I also believe in honesty and transparency. We were told that Hurd School, still not a school with declining enrollment, I may add, needed to be closed because of a deficit caused by vouchers and a failing HVAC system. A school where 19% of the students that they service had a disability. They could have stayed put at their school, but now they're being bused to Bethune or Capitol. Now, that same building is being leased for $240,000 a year to a private ESA-funded program. If ESA funding caused the crisis, why is the district potentially profiting from it now? And if the building was unsafe, how is it acceptable for students with disabilities? After crunching the numbers, though, I do believe that this decision will further drain the district of money and resources. The district even acknowledges in item 19 of the lease that the district may place children it cannot serve at their district into this private program, and they will want to discuss tuition discounts. That is a written admission that the district can't meet all students' needs. Parents like me who have children with disabilities but want our children to experience a public school because we too were publicly educated, feel like we're being forgotten and even being driven out of this district, and this doesn't help. I support school choice, but I also support programs like this, but I don't support closing public schools, blaming vouchers, and then quietly leasing the same space to an ESA-only funded provider. That's not transparency, that's a contradiction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pramila. Whenever you're ready, we'll have the electronic comment too, please.
This comments from Mr. Paul Booth. To the board members, I am writing to express serious concerns regarding the proposed multi-year lease of the recently closed Hurd School. Before approving this agreement, I urge the board to thoroughly investigate the following critical issues. The district proposed lacks crucial financial details. A comprehensive market analysis for the 2301 West Thomas campus, Hurd School, is essential. Specifically, market analysis. Where does the proposed $240,000 annual lease fall within the conducted market analysis? Provide the full analysis to the board. How many bids were submitted? How did you involve the community in deciding what to lease the space out for? Utility and janitorial costs. The lease agreement states utilities and janitorial services are included in the rent. What are the anticipated annual costs for these services? This is critical to determining the true net revenue. The district provided unrealistic revenue projections. Previous presentations projected 5.2 million in revenue from leasing various properties by 2027. This figure needs substantial justification, particularly given inconsistencies. Fillmore location. The district previously claimed the Fillmore location is worth 3 million annually. Who is the prospective tenant willing to pay this amount? If it's a non-school entity, only 15% can be applied towards maintenance and operation, M&O, significantly reducing the projected revenue. Also, the district has presented a plan to close, renovate, and reopen Fillmore as Phoenix Elementary contradicts the projected lease revenue. Please clarify the timeline and financial projections for this project and its impact on overall leasing strategy. Consider the impact on district enrollment and students with disabilities. The district automatically enrolled Hertz students at Capital School. A complete understanding of the impact of Hertz closure on overall enrollment is crucial before committing to a long-term lease. Approving a multi-year lease before a full enrollment picture is available is premature and potentially detrimental. A significant decrease in enrollment can negate any revenue generated from the lease. The district's previous stance against leasing to charter or private schools is now contradicted. The proposed lessee is a private school heavily reliant on ESA, Education Savings Account funds. This raises critical concerns about enrollment loss. The average ESA voucher for a student with disabilities is $15,000, potentially reaching $44,000 in some cases. Losing even a small number of students with disabilities to this private school could completely offset the lease revenue, especially considering utilities and janitorial costs. Okay. A detailed projection of student loss, particularly those with disabilities, is necessary. Educational adequacy. Does the district believe this private school is better equipped to serve students with disabilities, especially concerning essential life skills? This requires justification in comparison to the district's own capabilities. As a district, is the message.
That's time, Ms. Bramila. I don't know why this thing didn't make a noise. Yeah, sorry. Thank you to everyone who chose to make time to voice their concerns with the board today. We appreciate the perspective and the information. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Items E1 through now 14. Our consent agenda lists several items for approval by the board in a single motion. The items listed under consent agenda have gone through our administration and were made available for board member review as part of the itemized agenda. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Alicia Vinker, second.
Thank you kindly. May we please have a roll call vote, Ms. Bramila?
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion passes, and we will now move on to item F1 and have a presentation about the proposed budget for our next fiscal year.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gonzalez, my fellow cabinet members, we're here to present the proposed fiscal year 26 budget. So, excuse me, when we're going over the fiscal year 26 budget, we want to go over some key state factors. The base level amount for fiscal year 26 is 2% increase from 2024-2025 budget, which next year, and this is through ARS 15901, is $5,113.26 per unweighted ADM. Our TSL, or our transportation support limit, for 2026 is going to be $854,000 for TSL. 1.329 million for our TRCL. Now, remember, the state will pick up from 0 to the TSL amount, and the local taxpayer picks up from the TSL amount to the TRCL amount. So we really want to bridge that gap between the TSL and the TRCL because that is helping our local taxpayers pay less taxes. Our district additional assistance is $549.45 per ADM. This is Group A unweighted ADM prior year 100th day. So back in January, I think it was January 18th, that was our 100th day. We had 4,458 kiddos in our district. That's what the following fund, the next year funding is based off of. So we knew what we were going to get in our capital budget back in January. This year, our classroom site fund is $842 per Group A unweighted ADM, which is 5,246 kids. Now, it is good to mention that classroom site fund is based on the Arizona state tax revenue. Last year, we received, districts in the state received $792 per ADM. This year, it increased up to $842. Now, we got to be very, very strategic about the classroom site fund because, again, it is based on the Arizona tax revenue. If the state declines in revenue, this account will decline in revenue as well. So about 5 years ago, we were seeing about $300 per Group A unweighted ADM. And it is also want to bring to the board's attention the AEL, which is the aggregate expenditure limit. It's in the Constitution. It's a formula based on the 1980s. It has not changed for fiscal year 26. And there is no state approved budget right now. I was reading today that the Senate has passed a budget. The House has not agreed to it. And from my understanding is the Governor Hobbs has already said anything that comes to her, she's going to veto it. So we'll see what's going on here. We don't know. We're still monitoring it. So some additional key budget factors is ESSER sunset last September 30th. So we will see a huge decrease in our federal grants, mostly due to ESSER going away, but also the reduction in our federal grants that we saw this year. Our M&O and capital overrides, want to bring that to the board's attention. We are going out to the public on our November election. Our M&O override, and you'll see on the next slide, we do get about a little over $5 million in our M&O account, and our capital override's $3 million. As I mentioned prior, classroom site fund, we do want to monitor that because that account can go up and can come down. So we are trending towards the 6 to 7 year high mark from the state of Arizona. And you'll see a trend, right? It goes up and down with our revenues. So I think we're going to I think we're peaking right now. And I think we're going to start to see a decline in our state tax revenue in futures to come, meaning we're probably going to see a recession here soon. And that's based on local economists that are around the area. There is no constitutional language for DAA like the M&O account. So M&O, we do get a 2% every single year. That's in our Arizona Constitution. In our Arizona Constitution, there is no language for our capital, which is DAA, District Additional Assistance. So we want to go through the proposed M&O budget. We did base this off of a 200 enrollment decline. So we're seeing about 6,611 total weighted ADM. So we talk about unweighted ADM and we talk about weighted ADM. Unweighted ADM is how many heads are in the classroom. Now, we get weighted ADM based off of our special education students. So if a student is hearing impaired, the state says, hey, we're going to give you 4 times as what it costs to educate a regular education kid because it costs 4 times as much. So 4 times that base level amount, the $5,011 or $5,013. That's where we get the weighted ADM. So our total weighted ADM, 6,611, base level amount, 5,113. comes up with our base level control limit of 33.8 million. We do have audit service adjustment. So because we have to do an audit, the state requires us to do an audit. The state says, we're going to give you that money back. We're going to put it in your budget. So we get 38,500 is what we spend on our audit, which comes up with our revenue control limit, or RCL. So our RCL is 35.173 million. Now, it is good to note the RCL, revenue control limit, is what multiplied for the M&O override. So we have a 15% override. We're going to take 15%, multiply that by the 35.1 million. That's what we're going to project on our M&O override. Our Prop 123, about 298,000. Now, this is something that's in the budget. I believe it did sunset, but they are talking about possibly bringing that back. Desegregation funding of 11.1 million, that's every single year. And then our M&O override, again, is the 15% based off our RCL at 5 million, which brings us to a M&O GBL of 52.551 million. Now, I do want to mention the budget balance carry forward. I've been emailing the board on my board updates. I'm projecting about $1 million budget balance carry forward. We are anticipating that might increase. So I want to bring that to the board's attention. We might see an increase in our budget balance carry forward. Now we'll go over to our DAA, which is our capital. So again, unweighted, this is based on the fiscal year 25 100-day student count, 4,458 kiddos, base level amount of $549.45. Now, keep in mind that because we don't have a state approved budget yet, this number could increase. Likewise, for the M&O, the $5,113, we could see that increase above the 2% if the legislators agree to that. So we're just basing this off of what we got this year. It could increase, it could not, it could stay the same. Budget balance carry forward of $2 million. Again, this is based on one of the bigger purchases we have coming in is curriculum. We have about $1.5 million that we approved in our curriculum account, or in our capital account for curriculum. If it comes in prior to June 30th, then this number will be true. If it comes in after June 30th, which it might, we're getting pretty close to that date, then this budget balance carry forward is probably going to go up a little bit. So we are monitoring that. Now, based on the calculations for our capital account, the state of Arizona allows us to include prior year interest that we receive off of this account into our budget. We did not do that last year. This is something that we are working on this year. I believe we can probably generate about $20,000 to $40,000 in interest. And we are working with our business department to make sure that we can accumulate that interest because we can add it to our budget. That's free money that we could potentially use, for curriculum or stuff like that. So that is stuff that we are doing from the business department. We do have the UCO override, which is the unrestricted capital outlay, $3 million. The $3 million override does sunset this year. So this is the last year that we'll get this $3 million. If we do pass it in November with our voters, it'll continue next year for another 7 years. So very important, the override. This is the last year that we have for it. Our desegregation expenditures for the capital account, $50,000. So we were going to see about 7.5 million in our capital account. Again, it could go up if our budget balance carry forward goes up as well. Now, I do want to mention when we're talking about, how can we include our student outcomes focus group associated with our budget? And we want to bring to the board's attention, on Guardrail 1.1 budgeting, we're planning to form a budget committee that we're involving the community so they can come in and we'll set up and the community can come and put their input of where they want the money to be spent, right? We want to make sure that we're focusing on the students and the funds are going to the students. Now in Guardrail 3.1, we heard earlier that staff retention and recruitment is huge. And guardrail 3.1, that's where we're focusing on building that budget balance carry forward so that we can entertain those retention stipends. We can entertain the recruitment, having a benefits package, working with our HR department, negotiating health benefits, right? That's where we need that savings so we can do that, so we can attract and retain highly qualified staff members, not just in the classroom, but also support staff, right? We need bus drivers, we need custodians, we need all those, and we need them to focus on the students. So in guardrail 4.2, we're using the revenue from the civic fund and we're giving it back to the school. Guardrail 4.2, it talks about the civic, using the civic funds to disperse it equally amongst all the school sites. Now, one thing we did do is it was a 25% going back to the schools. We increased that to 30%. So we are, we're focusing heavily on these guardrails. If you look at 5.2, it's equitable and efficient transportation revenue, transporting and developing a plan. So right now we are working with our transportation department to develop a plan that we can equitably transport our students from their home to the campus, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're driving attendance up. It's called average daily membership, ADM, right? We want the kids in the classroom. If the kids aren't in the classroom, they're not learning. So how do we do that? We work with our transportation department to make sure that they're getting from their doors to campus. And then we finished with guardrail 5.3, where we're working with local partners to provide funding opportunities for before and after school programs. And we're doing that through lease funding opportunities like we have presented here tonight with Beyond Autism. That's where we're going out and we're seeing, hey, we're doing the math. We're as I told the board before, we're not making any more bad deals. So we're going out and we're doing the research. We can definitely provide that research with you, but as your CFO, it's my job to be in control of the finances. And I am not going to let this district negotiate a bad deal that we're at a opposition. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Board members, do we have any questions?
I do, just a couple, I think. I'm looking at your board update. I'm looking at the carry forward, just the carry forward we're not ending this year with $1 million. We're going to end next year with $1 million.
No, so we'll end this year with $1 million from my projections is what I'm projecting.
Okay.
Now, in my board updates,
Yeah.
I do include encumbrances in there.
Thought that one said we were still negative 500,000.
Yeah, so it does include the encumbrances. I want to present those to the board because those are in our books.
Okay.
I am taking out those encumbrances that I know are not true. But because it is in our books, I need to present that to the board or else I'm presenting false numbers to you guys.
So then we have, okay, help me understand.
Okay.
Oh, why do we have $1 million when we just closed 2 schools because we were going to be negative money?
Yeah, so a huge
And going into state takeover.
Yeah, so typically you want to finish between 5 and 10%.
I understand, but we were going to be negative and going into state takeover, and now you're saying we have $1 million.
Yeah, and also it is because
extra.
it's also because we're looking at prior year. We're going in, and as I told the board, we're gonna change our AFR, our annual financial report, from fiscal year 24. We're actively working on that right now because there's some stuff that happened in the past that we're correcting right now, and that's where we are moving forward.
You'll also remember that we put into effect a budget freeze, and so we stopped all non-essential funding and spending, and that helped us to recoup money that had been encumbered to be spent. That was giving us that projection of a higher loss.
It just feels like those are things that should have all been considered before we took drastic measures and we're talking about state takeover. But I will yield at that.
The question I was gonna ask was, just when can we anticipate, having those discussions about our budget in alignment with our goals and guardrails? But you started that this evening, so that was going to be my question. So I guess with Dr. Vink's question in mind, I know from what I take from that is that we're going to amend 2024 to kind of like clean up, or maybe
Yes.
as finding where corrections need to be made, like as I would like to kind of understand that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a huge example is our E-rate, account, which is technology, internet. So we were getting reimbursements through our E-rate account through invoices to the tune of about $600,000. And we discovered that was coming out of our M&O account. So it should have been coming out of our E-rate account. I think it was $660,000. We have not made that journal entry yet. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at, hey, where was this paid out of? Where should it have been paid out of? It's an accounting error that should have been caught. We did catch it, and now we're going to go back and correct it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
I'm really, really glad that we have a CFO in-house. This is my 6th year. And this is the first time I really feel like we are ahead of the game with having the expert financial backing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is we're trying to build about a $5 million budget balance carry forward. Right now, we're seeing about $1 million. I think it's gonna go a little bit higher. We're not gonna get to 5 million overnight. I'm projecting we'll probably hit it in about 2028. So it's going to take about 3 years before we get where we want to go. But that budget balance carry forward, that's where we're able to retain and recruit those staff and offer a competitive benefits package that people want to come to Phoenix Elementary and start to work on Guardrail 3.1, right? Where staff feels wanted. They feel like they want to be here. And we're seeing it when staff leave, it's impacting our students' test scores. So that's why with a $1 million budget balance on a $56 million budget, that's very, very scary. Very, very scary for a district this size to not have reserves in the bank. And especially we are a declining district. We are seeing our enrollment go down. So what's going to happen, I presented a couple months ago, we had a $8 million budget balance carry forward, and the next year it dropped down to $2 million. Where did that $6 million go? It got eaten up because we're paying staff, but we're not generating revenue based on our ADM. And that's not where we don't want to go back in that position.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, clarifying questions?
I do. I find it a little concerning that, you mentioned that things were getting paid out of different budgets and not the correct budgets, because for someone who's just getting here, we're having to do school closures. It's like we're in this really bad situation with our budget. And it sounds like we weren't managing our money properly and paying things properly, which takes a lot of accountability on us as a district that things weren't getting paid properly. And now we were in a really bad situation. Unfortunately, now we had to close schools. But luckily we have a CFO now that is here to, catch those inconsistencies. So just want to state that it's disappointing that things were not getting paid properly. And then the second thing that I would like to touch on is you said no more bad deals. So I know my question is an action item that I'll address other issues with later, but is it a bad deal for I can't remember off the top of my head, the deal that we're getting with Herd, including like maintenance and all that stuff? Like, are we getting played on that, or is this a good deal?
In my opinion, I approve this deal. I think it's a very healthy deal for the district. Especially with other surrounding schools. We're getting about $22 a square foot. A surrounding school that does border us, they're getting $11 a square foot. So very good deal for us.
And this will help us overall with our budgets and, that revenue that's gonna,
Yeah, absolutely. So this will go back to guardrail 4.2 where we're using that civic funds. So the civic fund, the revenue from this does go back to our civic fund, which will disperse about 30% equitably to all of our surrounding schools. While the district maintains the other 70%, which is paying for the custodial, the electricity. So that portion, the 70% of that 240 picks up what the district will cost, and then the 30% goes to the other surrounding schools. I just want to finish with, we will have, this is just the proposed, there's no action being taken. We will have the adopted budget coming to you. This is going to be the same presentation unless the state does adopt a state budget that increases that, then we'll go back and we'll redo it. But we'll do that at the June 8th meeting or July 8th meeting, and that will need to be voted on. And then throughout the year, so kind of a calendar, we do have legislation allows us to make a revised budget by September 15th. If there is any other state legislation involved increasing the budget or declining the budget. And then we'll have a December 15th revision, possibly, depending on how accurate we were based on our adopted budget. And then we'll come back to the board in May, by May 15th, and we'll have our May revision, and that'll be it. And then we'll work into fiscal year 27. So that's kind of a calendar of events for the whole entire year from a budget standpoint.
When you say revised budget by September 15th, is that where we're gonna revise the 2024 budget or this?
No, so the
2025.
2025 budget we did that in May. By May 15th, we did that and we submitted that. The AFR, the 2024 AFR or 2024 AFR, that is something that we'll do internally. Legislation allows us as a business manager to do that without board approval. And the 2024 finances have already been audited. So we can, there's really not much we can do from a financial standpoint, but because they have been audited. And then 2025, we're going to be starting July 1st, we're going to be entering what's called the encumbrance period. So from July 1st to August 30th, we'll be in 2 years. We'll be working in 25, closing out, and then we'll be opening 26. So the business department does work out of 2 years for about 3 months until we bring the 2025 AFR to you guys, to the board for approval. Once we bring the AFR, our books are closed for prior year.
Thank you.
And that's when we'll know like what we ended with.
Yep.
And you will at that point have found any missing money, unpaid invoices, random things that we should have known.
Yep, absolutely. So we want to close out 2024, or we're going to revise 2024 AFR, because when we revise the 2024 AFR, what does that do to 2025? it adjusts the numbers, right? The starting numbers. So we got to close out fiscal year, or we got to revise the AFR for 2024, which will change the beginning numbers for 2025. And then we'll close out 2025, and then now we'll have new beginning numbers for 2026 with the budget balance carry forward coming into 26.
And when again? What? month?
That'll be in October.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm shooting for mid-September. You want to get that done as soon as you can because you want to get out of 2 fiscal years very, very quick.
Okay, thank you so very much. With that, it is time to enter executive session. I move that we adjourn to executive session. Do we have a second?
Alicia Vank, I second.
Thank you. At this time, the board will convene to executive session pursuant to ARS Section 38-431.03, Section A3, for the purpose of receiving and discussing legal advice from the attorney for the public body regarding the board's options with respect to the superintendent's performance-based compensation pay. I don't expect us to be in there very long. My hope is within 30 minutes, we can be back out here and any action will be taken as soon as we come out. Thank you very much for your patience. We do have to finish the vote on that. May we please have a roll call vote?
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Valle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. Thank you. With that, our motion passes and we will adjourn to executive session at 6:50. Thank you very much for your patience. The time is 7:09 PM and we will resume to regular session. Next, we will move on to item H1, requesting approval of the superintendent's performance-based pay for the 24-25 school year. I move that we approve the superintendent's performance-based pay plan for the 24-25 school year as discussed in executive session. Do we have a second?
Alicia Vinker, second.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote?
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Valle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion passes. And we will move on to item H2, receive, discuss, and take possible action to confirm or revise board meeting and study session dates and times. With that, I'd like to allow time for board members to discuss amongst themselves and share ideas about our upcoming board meetings, to make any revisions to consider. And I'd like to share that whether or not we confirm same dates or choose new dates, there, per our governing board monitoring calendar, there's 4 study session and retreat dates that I would like to get on the calendar, so that would, we could use dates we've already got on here and change those to study session or retreat dates, just to keep that. I mean, that's a recommendation or not, but either way, at the end of discussion, I would like to at least have those figured out. So who would like to begin? I guess I'll start by asking if Tuesdays are still a good day to have board meetings on for everybody.
Tuesdays are really hard for me.
Okay, what would work?
A Thursday.
We used to have them on Thursdays. How does that look for cabinet? My thoughts would be like Mondays or Fridays would likely be difficult, but
Thursday, I think, given enough time, I think we can all adjust with Thursdays.
I believe Board Member Del Rosa is on a flight. So I wish we could get her input, but I didn't receive that prior to. I would be able to make that adjustment again with time to plan. What does that look like for you, Dr. Vink? Really? Okay. All right. Let me look at this calendar I've got.
My request would be to move to 1 meeting a month, as much as possible, especially if you're looking at 4 retreats and study sessions, and still keep them, as close to that 2-hour mark as possible, with the understanding that it could be difficult.
How does that sound to you? 1 board meeting a month?
That sounds fabulous, actually.
How about for our administration?
We are here to serve our governing board.
I believe I printed out a schedule for you, Mr. Whittle. I think I put that in there. Are there any, like, I don't want this to, I just want to be considerate of like important budget dates. So looking at the calendar, if we went to 1 board meeting a month, could you possibly have input on like which months we would need to have an earlier or later board meeting?
Madam President, would it be all right if, knowing that we're looking at 1 board meeting a month and moving to Thursdays, if we sat down at cabinet tomorrow and put together a draft
Okay.
to send through board updates and get feedback from everybody with that? Would that work?
That sounds great. And then we could revise our calendar and our board monitoring calendar in a future meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds really wonderful to me.
Would that help everyone?
Yay. Okay, perfect. So the 4 dates were based on our board monitoring calendar, and I'm looking at a board retreat and data review in August and September. I'm sorry, August or September. Do we have a preference for dates, I guess, Thursdays in those months where we could switch? I guess maybe that might be part of that discussion then.
And here's another clarifying question. In terms of study session, you may want to have a more in-depth conversation. It's the point of a study session. Would you want that to be in an afternoon session as opposed to an evening session?
Mm.
Or would you prefer to keep it during our regularly scheduled evening meeting time?
I think for retreats, we would like a bigger period of time. But then for study sessions, I think it replacing the same kind of 2-hour meeting that we have, I think that might work out. How does that sound?
I don't have strong feelings on that either way.
I'd be open. Are you saying the study session, instead of having them in the evening, having them earlier in the day?
Yeah, having them during the daytime so that you have a longer period of time to invest in learning and talking together about the items on the agenda for that retreat or study session.
I'm cool with meeting earlier.
Same. I can do that too. So I think the 4 dates that I have based on our board monitoring calendar could go into that conversation where we put it in a board update, get feedback, and then adopt it at a later time. We can have that discussion, or at least that exchange of information through that. Okay, great. Oh, that sounds way better than trying to decide on everything. But Thursdays are gonna work, and I look forward to.
And so we'll have our cabinet meets tomorrow morning, so we'll be able to get a schedule out to everybody as a draft and send your feedback back to us so that we can adapt it.
Sweet.
And just like we do typical with board updates, the same process for that.
Perfect. So, Mrs. Sanchez, may I ask if we should table this item for a later date since it is one of our action items, or can we just kind of skip over it and head into our next one? Perfect. Any further discussion on it? Okay.
President Trujillo, I am wondering, since we have a new board member being appointed at some point, like, should we, I know why we thought timing on this was good, because they're trying to get quorum, but also I just wonder if maybe it comes back on the agenda for approval. I don't know.
Once
I
we
don't,
have-
yeah.
Once we have the
yeah,
next board
I don't
member.
know.
That sounds good. I think that sounds reasonable. So up until that point, are we okay still meeting on Tuesdays, or should we? Or is, what if, again, not really having an update to my knowledge? Keeping it TBD, is that okay with your schedule?
It's cool. I mean, I make it happen, but yeah, it's just way a load off
Okay.
my chest.
Okay.
To do it on another day, but yeah, I'll keep doing it. I'm gonna do it now.
Got it.
But am I hearing you say that we could potentially look at just moving a couple of these meetings for right now until we get that appointed board member?
Yeah, I would be cool
Like,
with that.
could we consider or have cabinet consider in their meeting, whether we could move to one meeting for July and August and what those dates might look like? I think I heard, we're supposed to have an appointment soon, right? Yeah. We
We're
have to-
hoping for an appointment soon. I think it's dependent on how the interviews are going with the superintendent. Her goal was by the end of this month, but
Okay.
I don't know that she's been able to interview everybody. The challenge with the moving everything to the 29th, if we're going to have one meeting in July, we have to have the budget approved before July 15th.
Okay.
And then getting all of the data that we were talking about and giving you time to process that doesn't give you that window of time that we were talking about before. So July may not be a month where we
Okay.
can do, but the July 8 meeting is strictly announce public hearing, adopt the budget, and that's it.
Okay. Okay. Um, I- so when you have your cabinet meeting, could you come back to us with, actually, no, that makes sense. Okay, you'll come back with a full draft of this and then we can discuss at that point whether we want to move a couple of the meetings immediately while we wait on that appointment so that we can make sure we have quorum, or whether we want to wait entirely. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.
Okay, so with that, I move that we table this item to a future board meeting.
Alicia Vinke, second.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote? Ms. Bramila?
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Erika Valle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our item is tabled and we'll move on to item H2, receive, discuss, and take possible action. H3, take possible action on the governing board's policy diet. This is some work again that I am requesting everybody kind of see how their schedules fit. It's best, I don't know if we could do this like in work study sessions going forward, or if myself and another board member could work together to carry out the policy diet and bring something back to propose to the board. I put an example of at your desk of what a board policy, what the outcome of a board policy diet looks like, and it's work where the board is holds themselves responsible for looking at the policies that affect only the board and how we govern the district. So it's taking time to review all those and then put it into this format where it's more of a manual and it kind of where it makes us understand the policy better, what the focus is of it, and how it kind of pertains to our goals and guardrails. So I'm wondering if board members have time to commit to this, to work on, and then also share,
Yes, sorry. I might just, I know it sounds inefficient, but I might just take time to put it on a board agenda because I think you're creating some open meeting law issues if a small group of you are getting together. I mean, it's possible, but then you have to treat it like a meeting. I would just, I think, devote some time to have a substantive discussion as a board where then you can give the administration direction where they can bring you back some ideas. But you could at least come together to discuss some big picture ideas and have the administration bring back some options for you.
yeah, the idea is for at least two board members to be able to work on that so we don't violate open meeting law. But if we couldn't get that, I was going to ask permission to work toward appointing an ad hoc committee where we would be able to have a group of myself and staff members and maybe community
The
members.
committee would still need to comply with open meeting law as well, but
Okay.
which is fine. You just have to comply with it. You just have to
Absolutely.
follow the post and the agenda requirements of open meeting law.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is we should probably make this a study session date.
Possibly, or if you want, you and I can talk offline and then I can learn also a little bit more about what the particular objectives of the
Perfect.
project are, and then I can give you some recommendations about how you
Okay,
might attack
that sounds good. All right, then move that we table this item as well to a future agenda. Do we have a second?
Alicia Vinker, second.
Thank you kindly. May we please have a roll call vote?
Dr. Alicia Vink, Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion passes, and we will move on to item H4 to discuss and take possible action regarding the Beyond Autism lease.
So, Board Member Ovalle, this is where you can ask your questions.
Sorry, thank you. I was going to lead with that. I apologize. I was making myself a note. Yes, this is the time for having that discussion about your concerns regarding the lease at Hurd.
It's all good. Thank you so much for, excuse me, being patient with me as I learned all these different, systems or whatever. I guess what I wanted to say is, I looked at the agenda and I saw it on the agenda and I was a little bit disappointed. Just because, I mean, I'm happy that we're finding ways of revenue. It's just, me being, and I'm gonna say it again over and over and over, is that I'm a very community-driven person. And so when we started going through school closures, my biggest thing was like, we didn't have community interaction. I mean, we did in certain ways, but not in ways that I thought was more effective. So I felt like that was lacking. And then when I asked questions on, what community processes look like, then I was told after there would be a community process when it came to selecting someone to lease the building. So I'm starting to see that, and I'm new here, so it's kind of disappointing. And, I could be like, I know my background is community organizing and, maybe I'm expecting too much or thinking too much about it, but, I just think that it's kind of disappointing to me, just not seeing it happen over and over and over. And I feel like having communities and families involved in our processes is just such a big deal. And I'm starting to realize that I don't think we have the relationships with families that we think we do, because we can't call on them to come and speak or make plans or figure out how things move. I do have a couple community members who stay in contact with me, also voice concerns. And there's, in particular, the community that is most affected by this closing of the school and now a lease of somebody else coming in is not being spoken to directly. And so I do have issues with that. I think that in the long run, having families involved is super important, because when we come up with these guardrails, they have to be the people that speak on the needs that we know what we need. I'm a family member too. I'm impacted by these closures as well. So we know what we need. And, it's unfortunate that we're not there at the front or at the table. So I don't know what it is or what it could take or how I can support. I know that, there is family engagement. But I'm hoping to see in the future more of that. So it's just a little concerning to me, like when we say we do have a community process and I have yet to see one. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Can you remind me what the process was to find this tenant?
Is that directed to me, Dr. Vink? Yes.
Well, I think it is
Yeah.
correct, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
you.
And I want to start by saying, Member Ovalle, I actually really appreciate this opportunity. I'm a social worker. I'm a master level social worker. That's how I'm trained. And I very much share your concerns for the community. And I just want to take us back down memory lane. We were required to do one public meeting for school closure. We actually did 5 under open meeting law. We heard from the community 5 times. I just reviewed my notes from all of those meetings. They were copious. My cabinet members gave me a little, gave me a little grief about that, but every community comment that was made during that process was very important to me. I'm a 25-year employee of this district. I want to see it succeed. And so all of those were top of mind to me. And I made a couple of notes when this item was moved. We heard loud and clear from the community that they didn't want the building to be vacant. They had serious concerns about having a vacant building. They wanted to keep Head Start on site. They really wanted partners who were going to better the community for the residents that lived there. There were concerns about property values, and we heard that loud and clear. The community also spoke pretty passionately over and over and over at these meetings about the need for us to get fair market value. And we spent significant time understanding what fair market value meant by zip code, by commercial real estate. We have a broker that we've procured that has significant history. He advised us, what those rates were. We took this very seriously. This tenant came to us. They were looking for space and they were actually interested in another property. And that started the discussion of this is where we're at and we're in community discussions. And if the opportunity should arise, we're happy to loop back to you when the time comes. And so that's how we came to know Beyond Autism. They actually reached out to the district. I think it's important for us to keep in mind timing is of the essence. We are not the only district that's experiencing declines in enrollment and school closures. There are lots of neighboring school districts around us that also have empty buildings. For us to be able to negotiate a very fair deal that's approved by our CFO and cabinet, I think is a real benefit to the district. It allows us to provide opportunities to students that are here right now. That was another thing we heard loud and clear through Reimagine Phoenix was, if you get these revenue generating opportunities, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to distribute it? Are you going to keep it all at district office? How are kids going to benefit from this? And so I think it's important that we take a look at other lease opportunities that we have. And I just want to give this as a comparison, just a little food for thought. We're talking about just under 11,000 square feet. It's less than 40% of the Hurd campus, which would generate $240,000. And we have another lease opportunity that is 172,000 square feet that we receive $660,000 for. So when you talk about fair deals and deals that are good for the district and things that are going to be good for our students and our residents and our taxpayers, I feel strongly that this is a positive. I also feel really strongly about us being a good community partner. We've said time and time again, we're not going to go into any kind of arrangements with competition. So I just would like to speak to that a little bit. Beyond Autism is a private day program, and we're required to provide free and appropriate public education for our students. That's a really huge continuum. And right now, we don't provide services to all of our district residents at our schools. We have to contract out. We might have students who have severe needs that require a day program or a program with ratios that we can't provide or training opportunities that our teachers don't have. And so we already do that. We already procure those private day placements. And Beyond Autism is one of those programs. We service autistic students in-house. We're able to do that. We have students who are working on academic goals. Beyond Autism is working on life skills. It is a program for students who have extreme neurodivergent needs, and they're working on a different set of life skills and daily living skills than what we would provide at our in-district autism programs. So I just kind of wanted to dispel that myth about this being another competitor and, are we going to lose enrollment? We will not lose enrollment to Beyond Autism. I can say that with conviction.
Is Beyond Autism someone who we contract out with currently?
No, they are not. We don't have any students, no. And going back to the vouchers, yes, Beyond Autism does accept vouchers. They always have. Back when vouchers allowed for families to have some school choice and they weren't open to families other than ESS students. And so Beyond Autism accepts also private pay. They're not funded solely by vouchers, but this is a way for Phoenix L to recoup some of that voucher money that we're not receiving right now because families may be making other choices.
The maintenance is included in the 240,000. I did ask Dr. Gonzalez what the utilities were, but I'm not sure if I asked you or,
Yes, thank you.
Got
That's a
that.
great question.
What
The
the
utilities
maintenance is.
last year were $135,000
for the whole property.
for the whole property.
Yes.
So the way that we, and a market analysis was completed, that also came up earlier. Berry Realty completed that for us and did a market analysis. They recommended a square footage price per square foot just for the real estate, if you will, just for the building itself. And then we looked at our utility costs, and we have to maintain what's called system and structures. Whether we have a renter in there or not, we have to maintain systems and structures. We have to have safe buildings that meet fire code, that have electricity and running water. So those are still on us. Maintenance structures and systems is on us. Things like custodial is built into the cost per square foot. And so there was additional charge put on top of the market rate for the actual real estate that covered the utilities and the janitorial and the grounds.
So that total is the $22 a square foot?
Correct.
Okay, so then when you talked about $11 a square foot for another neighboring district, does the neighboring district, is that $11 including utilities and maintenance?
I don't believe
Okay.
I don't believe the janitorial was, but the electricity and utilities was.
Okay.
It gets a little confusing if you're going to have multiple renters on one property. If you're not charging by square footage, it wouldn't be fair, if you will, to charge someone the entire electric bill when they're only utilizing 40% of the campus. So we just did a straight percentage built into the square footage that they plan to use.
And that makes sense. I just like to make sure I'm comparing sort of
Absolutely.
apples to apples, even though I know that's not.
And I do want to add something in on the utilities usage. We are working with our facilities department to ensure, one of my biggest things was, are they going to leave the HVACs on all night? So that is something that we did negotiate with them. We will be monitoring that on an ongoing basis.
Okay. And then the condition of the building, I saw that they're in charge of renovating for themselves-ish. Does that
Yes.
sound right?
Any improvements that they want to make to the building, we have to give written approval for anything over $5,000 if they want to paint or they've, inquired about the possibility of carpeting an area. Any of those kinds of improvements are on the tenant.
Okay, so are they planning to begin operating immediately, do we know, or they're planning to?
We're hoping to exchange keys in July, and then their academic year starts very similar to ours. I don't have their calendar in front of me. I'm sorry, I don't have their first day of school. I believe it was the first.
So they are planning to welcome students?
If the lease is approved, yes.
I see.
Mhm.
Why? So, I mean, one of the big things with closing Hurd though was the condition of the facility.
Mhm.
So then can someone talk a little bit about that?
I can speak to it a little bit. There are improvements that need to be made on buildings all of the time, and utilizing smaller spaces. We're in renovation right now at a couple of our other campuses, and shuffling students is hard to do when you're functioning and you've got a full campus. You've got to move classrooms. We're living that at Garfield, and we'll be living it soon at Edison. So it does make those improvements easier. We have got to hone in better on our preventative maintenance schedule and understand what those actual costs are. We've asked plant services to prepare that for us so that we know exactly by campus what maintenance is coming up, and we have a better handle on what those overall costs will be so that they can be figured into the budget.
So are
That's
we
an
going to
area
be
for improvement.
maintaining, are we going to be doing some maintenance to Hurd before they take over the property? Okay.
No,
so-
we're not planning to do any improvements. No. It's as is condition in the lease.
Okay. I thought that we heard that Hurd was in such bad condition that we really needed to move the kids out of there. Are we saying that the portion that, what are we saying here? Why is it okay for these kids to go there?
Hurd is not in bad condition. It hasn't been wasn't kept up to the standard that we would want, but it's not in bad condition. It's just, it needs to be painted. It needs to have the grounds cared for. It just needs a refresh. In comparison to the school that's 375 yards, Magnet is in much better condition and is kept up in a much better frame than Hurd was.
But that is our responsibility, and now another school is going to bring their students into it. In a lease situation, do we not normally put the property like in a listing or something and have people, multiple potential tenants come to us?
That's a good question. We've had multiple tenants come to us. I spend a lot of my days touring property. It's actually quite fun. Not all of them have panned out. Not all of them have come to this point in the discussion, but that's something we pay for if we list it. If tenants come to me and I do that work, that's a lease finder's fee that we're not paid by the district. So I've said this before and I'll say it again. It is astounding to me the number of entities that we have contacting us about real estate, leases, purchases. They're coming to us. We are using our realtor for other properties within the district, that those are marketed publicly. At this point in time, we have folks coming to us about Hurd, so we haven't listed that publicly.
So Dunbar is listed publicly right now?
It is not listed
Okay.
publicly.
Okay. Is it going to be? Do we? Or
I don't know. That's a good question.
I thought that's what I heard you
Yeah.
heard you say was the ones that.
We have plant services currently publicly listed, the plant service.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, with our realtor.
Okay.
And we also have multiple inquiries coming in about Dunbar. And so we will field those as they come. Letters of intent, those are going through our realtor.
Okay. Does the board ever get like the list of interested people, or we only get it when
When it shows to not be a nothing burger, we're informing you. I went back and looked at the date of Beyond Autism, and I informed the board in early April 11th, that this was a possibility that I felt truly could come to fruition. And so when they get to that point, yes, I'm more than happy to inform the board of who the possible partnership is, and kind of what the broad financials would be for those opportunities.
Okay. And then I think my last question is, during the public hearings, there was talk of a $5+ million revenue projections for multiple properties. I understand that. But how does this 240,000 that includes utilities? So it would be better in my brain to talk about it as what we're actually getting just for the property without utilities and maintenance, because I know that when we've talked about other properties that are maybe bringing in 600,000, we've said that it's a bad deal because we're paying that maintenance and we're actually losing money on it, is
Right.
what we have said. So, but anyway, question is, how does this rate figure into that overall $5+ million revenue? Or is that $5+ million revenue not really what we're seeing potential for?
That's a great question. I think it's important for us to keep in mind, we already have some lease opportunities in place, right? We have the Fillmore property, we have the New Times building. We do facility rentals of our existing campuses now. I was excited today. We got our first Facilitron check. It was only $2,000, but hey, 1 month, that's not bad. So all of those factor in. And so when you're asking about what we would look to net, we wouldn't profit approximately $192,000 for the portion that's leased to Beyond Autism. Once you take out our possible utilities cost, we would have had to have maintained a janitorial staff anyway for Head Start. So this really helps us. It makes better use of those employees' time. So there are multiple properties that factor into that $5 million mark that we're hoping to get to. This would
Okay.
be our start.
Okay. I think um, it would be helpful to see in a board update what we think where that $5 million projection was coming from, like what those numbers actually add up to, and whatever documentation we have to support that. Because in my head, when I looked at those properties, I was expecting closer to like, I thought it meant we were going to get $1 million a year for HERD, and so to
Right.
see, I'm like 500,000, well, if 500,000 plus the 2 million for Fillmore, plus it doesn't add to me. So I need to see, I guess, the
Gotcha.
math, please.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all that I have. Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
I would like to circle back to see what we can do to come through. I know with our board retreat and data review coming up in August, at that time, we would talk about scheduling our two-way communications with the community. However, I would like to circle back to Board Member Ovaya's reminder that I do remember having that discussion, that we would somehow connect these lease opportunities with community feedback. What would that look like? Say we had more time, like in retrospect, the time between April 11th and then July, like what could it look like to have that information, I guess, taken to the community to get feedback on that? Would that be like a different public hearing, or what could that look like in the future to, I guess, meet that need?
Yeah, I think that's open for discussion with the board. We had cafecito conversations that were not part of the public meetings. We hosted those at both Dunbar and at HERD and at the Family Center. I'm more than happy to have other opportunities like that where we can explain opportunities that are presented to us. We've also compiled a panel of staff and community members, and invites were out to some family members for possible, we're receiving tons of letters of interest for Dunbar. And so we decided that the best way to do that was to have a review committee. And the review committee we can report back once we receive those letters of interest and let folks know what those kind of entailed. I do want to speak to the fact that I receive a ton of inquiries that are also quite confidential. The amounts of money that we're talking about with some of these deals and some of the entities that are interested in our property, having those go public is not in their best interest. And we have partners that are also looking to do business with us because they believe that we are working in a transparent fashion. We're trying to be very open with our finances. That's who folks want to do business with. They don't want to enter into long-term lease deals with an organization that they're not sure is monitoring their finances and is going to act in good faith. So it is sort of a fine line with coming out publicly too early and saying this is a possibility, because Dr. Gonzalez can attest, I've had a million times where I've run in her office and I'm like, this is it, we've got it. And 48 hours later, it's kind of evaporated. So I just want to bring that to the board's attention, that there is a level of confidentiality. These are huge financial decisions for some of the folks that are thinking about partnering with us. And there is a level of respect that we need to uphold.
On kind of sort of that note, sorry. Knowing that we haven't worked with this partner before, and that we want the community to be supportive, what kind of due diligence do we do of an organization before we allow them to move into our properties? Like, how do we know
great
that
question.
they're amazing for kids?
We do a little bit of private PI work, you know, we look them up, we look at the reviews, we talk them. They're currently using a facility, a religious facility. They've been there for a number of years. They've had a very positive relationship with the tenants of that. They've simply outgrown it. And I think it speaks volumes to me that their enrollment continues to climb. They need to, families are really, they're searching for quality programming, and without getting into too much of their, this is a very personal mission for Beyond Autism. And I often trust my spidey sense, and I've spent significant time with these individuals and I've met their staff. And I believe that they're going to be a good partner. There have been multiple entities that have reached out to us, Dr. Vink, that we have not pursued opportunities with, based just on feedback that we've received or other digging that we've done.
I guess my only thing that I'd like to say around family engagement is sometimes we need to get out of the school and off our campuses to really engage with families. I mean, we've got a community member from, I think it's called Westwood community, who's present, you know what I mean? Like, just connect, talk, you know, how can we get this information over to you all, since you all live in that community there? And engage in and make it really be, and this takes everybody's part, make it be like a really good conversation where, you know, no bickering, none of that, like we're coming together to really talk about how to improve our community and improve other people's community. I think that might be a good idea. You know, but I'm new here and I'm willing to support in any which way, because that's what I do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further questions? Or clarifying needs? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the Beyond Autism lease? Or I move that we approve the Beyond Autism lease. Do we have a second?
Alicia Vink, I'll second.
Thank you, Kylie. May we please get a roll call vote?
Dr. Alicia Vink? Dr. Alicia Vink?
I am still very frustrated that was quite clear that it was not okay for our students to be in the building, that the building was not in good condition. It sounds like this is a good thing for the community, and that it is financially sound. But I don't think it's great to say building's not in good condition, we can't make it good for our kids, but you can have it for your kids. With that, I vote yes.
Ms. Erica Ovalle?
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo?
Aye. With that, our motion passes, and we will move on to closing items. Do we have any board member requests or future agenda items?
I have one. My request is for a study session to evaluate the effectiveness as a whole of our SOFG model and potential alternatives.
Perfect, thank you. I don't have any future agenda items. Any further? No. Okay. With that, we'll move on to adjournment. I'd like to move that we adjourn this meeting at 7:53 PM. Do we have a second?
Alicia Finger, second.
Thank you kindly. May we please have a roll call vote?
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Valle,
Aye.
President Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our meeting adjourns and we will be back here in the boardroom on July 8th potentially. But as soon as we have a decision made, we will communicate that to the community. Thank you very much.